Hi, we're in the home stretch. We've got just this is the last one that we're going to do. We're going to finish the final assembly. This is how mine has turned out. I'm pretty happy with everything on it. It's a great bag. So I hope you've enjoyed making it, and I hope you've enjoyed sewing along with me. I hope you found some value in tips and tricks and methods that I use. Thank you so much for coming along on this ride with me. So this is the conclusion of the first bag that I'm doing with Celine from Blue Cala Patterns. I'm expecting that we're going to be doing some more, so please keep following me along with that, and hopefully you find some great patterns. She's got some beautiful stuff out there. So, and she keeps making more, so that's been really amazing as well. If you have found value in this, please give me the little thumbs up down below my video. That helps me. Subscribe, of course, to my channel. I appreciate that. Share it if you know other people that might have some benefit from it. I like to go on and let people know when they have questions. I like to share my link and stuff like that with them. So that's been good. I cannot possibly tell you how much I appreciate all your input, your comments, your support, just everything. I'm having a really great time, so I want to keep on doing that. So I have also included the link to my Facebook group. It's called Friends of Debbie Hunker. But above the comments and below my video, there's a little space there. I'll have the link to Blue Cala Patterns, to this pattern, and also my link to my group. So if you'd like to join us there, we're having some fun and we're having some great discussions, and I just really love to see you there. So thanks again, and I'll see you later. The next step that we're going to do is our handle. So I've got my piece of vinyl that I'm using. I've got it interfaced. I'm going to draw a line down the center of it. Now I like my double-sided tape. So I'm going to leave a little space at each end. But I'm going to take my 1/2 inch double-sided tape. There we go. I'm not going to even take this off of here yet, because I need to sew my end here. So I'm going to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance right at the end. So I have my seam. I'm just going to peel back my tape a little bit. I did get a little close to my seam allowance. Not that that makes any difference, but I'm going to peel it back on both sides. In her instructions, Celine says to do a top stitching just to keep those both back. Certainly you can do that. I choose not to. Not that there's anything wrong or anything about doing that. And this is where I'm going to go back to my trusty tape. Now this is Tombow. This just happens to be what I grabbed. I've got several in my little tickle trunk of, I guess this one is Tombow as well. But it doesn't matter, as long as you can get them at craft stores. Here we have Michael's. I'm not sure what you guys have down there, or in the States or anywhere else. More so in the scrapbooking is where you'll find this stuff, because that's what it's used mostly for. So for myself, I just like to put a little bit of this along the edge, and then it holds it down for me. I'm kind of holding it up high here so it didn't work the greatest. I'm doing it. Oh boy. Yeah, I'm not taking my own bloopers out. You have to put up with my giggling. So now I can take this off, and I'm just going to work my way around. And I'm using my center line as where I'm folding into. And this isn't sticking super well, it's pretty stiff. Normally I don't use vinyl and interfacing. I know I did on the other one because my vinyl was really soft and a little bit on the stretchy side, so I didn't want my handle stretching and kind of feeling elasticy. So I'm just going to work my way all the way around and just kind of keep clipping to hold things in place. So I've gone around and I've got everything folded over into the center. It's butted up. I've just got it all clipped. Now I'm just going to fold this over. Now my seam is right here. You can put your seam, I guess, wherever you want. I put it here at the end. Then when I sew it down, you won't see the seam because it'll be completely sewed down. So the downside of that is if your machine has a hard time handling all the layers, you're going to have a hard time getting through there. So you may want to move it a little bit. Really, now I just want a few clips just to kind of hold it steady. Oh, now I got my clips locked. And there we go. So there I have it. Now I'm just going to go ahead and top stitch about 1/8 of an inch or so. I just use my presser foot on my industrial machine, so I don't know necessarily that it's 1/8 of an inch, but it's something that I can always use and keep consistent for myself, so that's what I do there. Once again, I'm going to start just up from my corner, so I'm just going to go ahead. I've taken all my clips off because I don't need them anymore. Everything's staying together quite well. Now I'm not super happy with this. You can see things moved over on me, I guess, when I wasn't looking. It's it's not the end of the world. It really isn't. It's not that that noticeable or anything. So I think I'm going to leave it. This is not a customer piece. It's probably going to be either for me or for my husband. So I'm not 100% happy with this. It's fine, and if it was for a customer, I would redo it. There's no doubt in my mind. This is what happened is my vinyl shifted a little bit. This edge was perfect, and then I got a little bit off track here. So then both sides are just a little bit off. So again, I'm probably the only one. Once it's sitting up here, I'm probably the only one who will ever notice it. But if it was for a client, I certainly would choose to redo this. So that's just who I am. So, and on we go. So in order to attach the handle, I've got the wrong side up, and I'm just going to pin back. Get these out of the way so I don't have to deal with them. I'm just going to deviate again a little bit from the instructions. This is a personal preference. In the instructions, the handle gets sewn on first, and you certainly can do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm actually going to just use a couple of extra pieces of Peltex, and I'm just going to straight on rivet it. So I need my pattern piece. Now I have my pattern piece here. I'm going to center it. I know the edges here are the same as the edges there, so centering it each way. Now again, I've marked holes or poked holes in my pattern piece, in my template, so I can just go through and mark. I'm going to do that on the front as well. Center that. And here, because it's dark, I'm going to use my chalk. So on the back I've marked because I'm going to put my Peltex there. I just have some scraps of Peltex. So just going to and these are certainly not perfect. But these I'm going to place, my mark is about halfway between because, oh, sorry, no. I'm going to mark it here because the corner of from the other side, but these marks are for the corner of my handle, and I'm going to be riveting in here. So I want to be riveting through that Peltex piece as well. So those are both going to go here. And it's probably just as easy. I can fuse them on as well. So I just need them there to stay positioned. So now when I flip this over, I can go ahead. And I'm going to use my punch. My pliers are really great. I love them. They don't fully eliminate the need for a punch. I'm going to try and explain. Some people have talked about using the hammer and punch, or hammering the rivets, and they can't seem to get them done properly. They don't set right. This is my theory on this. You need a really good stable surface. So I'll show you here on my table. Trying to get kind of an underneath view here. Now, if you look right here, it's hollow. I have my countertop, and then there's a hollow space there. Same with over here. I have a drawer underneath here, but there's no support. So when I do my riveting and everything, I actually do it right here where my center support is, because that is absolutely the most stable, hardest part of my cutting table. The other option would be to do it on the floor. So I find for myself, if I'm on that good stable surface in the center of my cabinets, that's a really good hard. I don't know if that makes any sense. It does to me, but so I'm going to go ahead and see if I can. Sorry about this. Okay, so now I have my my block. And I have, this is my punch. I use the smallest hole. This one has, you can just switch out your different size holes. But this I'm going to place in the center. I have everything marked. I'm going to use my mallet, or this one is specifically called a dead blow hammer. And I've gone right down into, I'm stuck, there we go, right down into here. So I've taken out a pretty good chunk. But at least I know that I've gotten through all of my layers, and they're all even. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side before I rivet anything, because it's easier just to lay this here. I've got a big bump right here because I've got my seam is underneath there. Because I'm not sewing, well, it wouldn't matter anyway. If I was doing it with my industrial machine, it would go through all of that. Again, I know I've gone through everything. And I'm just going to go and get my rivet press. So I have my rivet done on the one side. That was pretty simple. Line it up and put it in. Now the other side. Now this is where we need to lift our handle up because we need some slack in there. And get my rivet and my cap. Everything's still out of the way in the back, I know that. So I have my rivet through there. This one just barely comes through, which is just fine. Got it sitting on there. Now I have to kind of curl it up a little bit to fit it in. Just have to curl this around. And I've got it sitting on the bottom. Top. Straighten out my handle a little bit. Get some pressure. And there we have it. And it's beautiful on the back as well. So now we have the handle put on. Our next part of this is going to be attaching the pockets, the inside pockets. To make things easier, now this is not in her instructions. This is my preference of doing things. We already have our centers marked on all of our pieces. So on the inside here as well, I've got centers marked everywhere. What I'm doing is, and you'll find out when we get to the next step why I've chosen this number. From the center, mark about 2 1/4 inches on each side, and from the end in 2 1/4 inches. And do that both on this outside. I'm just dealing right now with the lining pieces. Do the same thing. This one I didn't mark yet. So I'm going to, at 2 1/4 from my center, I'm going to mark that there, and 2 1/4 over here. So I'm doing that with all of my pieces. Our seam allowance is going to end up being approximately very close to 1/2 inch. It's going to be more 1/2 inch than 3/8 of an inch. But what I'm going to do now, in between, I'm going out from my outer edge. I've gone in 2 1/4 to my next mark, which is 2 1/4 inches from the center. I'm going to clip all of this along here. So I'm going to watch. I'm going to make sure that I'm only about 1/4 of an inch, and I'm going to do quite a few. I'm going to go about every 1/2 inch or so. You can go more, you can go fewer, doesn't matter. We just don't want to go too deep. So I'm going to stick to about 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to do that on both sides. I'm going to do that with everything, with every edge that is on the lining. We'll start with just the lining. So go ahead and clip just between these two lines, because that's where our curves are going to be when we get to our pieces. Those clips are going to allow us to go around this curve a lot easier. We can also do that. So I've got all of mine now clipped. I've got both of these edges. I've got all of my clipping done, both edges on both sides. We can also do that on the outside edges of the outside. Only here, all I have to do, I have my center marked, I'm 2 1/4 each way, and I'm just going to clip from my mark just before the seam allowance for the contrast piece. And again, the spacing isn't the important thing, but give yourself lots of clips. It just makes for a smoother curve. The spacing is not the important thing. The depth that you're clipping is what's important. You don't want to go too deep, because we don't want to have our clips into the seam allowance or past the seam allowance so that you can see them. And I'm going to do that on both sides. So I have everything clipped. Now I'm going to go back into my lining. I'm going to start on the inside. Now I'm using my shiny side as my right side with my PUL. I'm going to line up my marks, my center marks. Now again, because I'm using PUL, I don't want to use pins in it. If I do use pins, I have to be really careful and stay pinning within my seam allowance. I'll show you what happens here. Now I've clipped all of this. I have to get, oh, sorry. Open, open your zippers. I fought with this the first time around. And then I opened the zipper. It's like, oh, well, that's a lot easier. So, all right, sorry. Gonna get all straightened out here. All right, so now we end up having to bend all of this around. So this is where we're gonna have quite a few clips. But we're just going to work at it. Things get a little narrow in here because we were dealing with the seam allowance for the zipper as well. So I'm going to go work a little bit backwards. Going to line up my edge, see how much I might have to ease in, and it's not bad. The clipping really helps because it just takes that pressure off of the edge. There we go. And once again, we have to curve this around. So I'm just going to go right back to this back edge. And just kind of have to work it in, ease it in. And it's going to pull because it doesn't want to stay bent very well. But that's all right too. It's probably easiest to do each one of these on their own. Don't try and clip everything and then try and sew everything. Do one at a time. I've moved you out a little bit from where I normally have you. I usually kind of have you as a bird's eye view of what I'm doing here. But I want you to see that I struggle with this too. There's a lot of fabric. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be maneuvered. I find the easiest way for myself is if my side piece is down, because it lays flat and everything else is curved. So and I'm not ashamed to admit this. It takes me 2 kicks at the cat here to get this seam proper. The first time I do it at 3/8 of an inch. And my seam is not very pretty. I did one already, and you can actually see this outside is all wobbly. That's my first seam. Then I go back and I do a better seam the second time around. Because then I don't have to worry about my clips. I don't have to worry about things where they're sitting. What I worry about this time on this seam, and you could baste it. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I guess I actually I am in a basting stitch. I didn't move it from when I sewed my vinyl. I bump up to 3 stitch length when I'm doing vinyl, just so there isn't quite so many holes punched in it. And there's times like I felt the zipper tab in there, so I just had to go around the other side and move it because I don't want to run it over. So I'm just going to go along here. I'm going to show you these. These are, well, they're tweezers, obviously. They have an angle on them. The best place to find these, unless they have really good quality ones at your local fabric store, your best bet is going to be finding these at somewhere where they actually sell sewing machines. I think probably what they're typically used for is for threading sergers, because you have to get in so much. But these ones are really good, strong ones. I have another pair that are really thin, really flimsy. I bought them at Fabricland. I probably paid a couple of bucks for them, and that's about probably more than what they're actually worth. But the great thing about these is that they are strong enough that you can actually grab and move your fabric. These in bag making have absolutely saved me, because I can, like, going around this curve now, let me see if I can just push you in here a little bit more. Yeah, there we go. My fabric is pulling back because I'm supposed to be going around a curve here. So what I can do with my tweezers is I can go in, I can grab, and they can go places that my fingers can't safely. So as I'm going around this corner, and I can kind of push things out of the way, smooth them out, and if they move back, I can just grab and pull again. So I have to do about 4 things at once. And again, I don't expect that this seam is going to be really super pretty. I'm just going to move you back out again, a little bit out of my way. There we go. Now I'm actually just going under, because my finger is actually right here. You can see it. I'm moving it out of the way, of course, but I've kind of got a hold of my lining, my lining there. And I'm just kind of pulling it out of the way. It's just a matter of maneuvering, and I know that stitch just went really wonky. But again, when I go over it the second time, that's where I'm going to really even out my seam. And don't get discouraged. It's easy to do that, going around these tight curves. Just work at it. The first time is kind of rough. Even for me, the second time isn't being all that easy either, but I'm persistent, so I'm just going to keep at it. I know this is kind of boring, but I just want you to see that if you're struggling with it, I've struggled with it as well. It's not anything that you guys are doing. Okay, so just to show you just how bad my stuff is here. That's me coming around the corner because I'm dealing with clips, I'm dealing with everything. So this one isn't quite as bad, but yeah, it's not pretty. So I'm going to go around again, and I'm going to use the my half-inch mark on my sewing machine. So there we go. So just to show you, don't give up. The first one was really bad, and the second one has really smoothed things out. Just a little bit. And again, I mean, that isn't perfect, but that little bit of a wobble there isn't going to show on the, or it's on the inside anyway, but that's not going to show. So now only 2 more. And those are the outside pieces. They are a little bit easier to do. You have this outside piece that you're attaching to, so it allows for a little bit more movement. You have a little bit more room. So that's what we're going to do next. Well, here we are. I've got all of my lining pieces sewn in. Got all 4 of those done. This isn't in the instructions, and this is just purely personal preference. I'd like to go and trim this down a bit. So I'm going to take about half of the seam allowance off. I just find that for myself, it takes some of the bulk out of those seams and that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for all 4 of the lining pieces. So now I have all my edges trimmed. We're going to sew the bottoms of the linings together. Now one of them we're going to use to turn the bag inside right, outside right, whatever. We're going to turn it around through this hole. So I'm going to mark 1.25 inches from each end. So I'm going to clip these together, and I'm just going to sew just from the edge in. Sorry, that was an oops there. So I'm just going to go 1.25 inches in and back stitch so that when we turn it, we don't end up opening up that seam completely. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. But this one, I can actually just sew all the way across. So I'm just going to do the straight seam allowance of, I think it's 3/8 of an inch down here as well. So this one can get clipped all the way across and sewn completely shut, and the other one just the edges. So I'm just gonna clip those spots so that I can just sew the edge. So I have my bottoms done all the way across on the one, and on the other one I've just got my 1 1/4 inches. The next thing we're going to do is sew the box corners. Again, these ones kind of take a little bit of maneuvering. I'm going to open mine up. And if you can get this pulled, I fold my seam allowances in toward the center. So from the other side, I don't know if you can see that very well or not, this angle is going to come out from where your seam allowance is. Don't expect that that corner is going to be right there at the seam allowance. And the same as on the other side. I'm going to flatten all of this out as much as we can. Flip that seam allowance toward the center. And that one's ready. I'm not sure that it makes any difference whether you open this seam up or not. That's just my preference. Again, once you get this folded over toward the center, you can feel how it flattens out. And I'll do that for the other ones on the other side. So I have all 4 of my box corners ready to sew. So I'm just going to go ahead and go straight across each one of them at 3/8 of an inch. Okay, so I have all of my box corners sewn. And I still have, this one is open for turning, and this one is sewn shut. I might just give that a little bit of a steam and hand press it, or finger press this open a little bit. Again, not the end of the world. The next we have to do is put on the outside side pieces. And those have the piping on them. I'm going to do basically the exact same thing as we did with the rest of it. I'm going to find, oh, I've lost my mark for my centers on here. This one as well. There we go. And I've clipped this one as well, so I know it's going to fit around my corners. I'm going to match this up. Now this is really important. When we sew this, we want to stop at 3/8 inch. We do not want to sew all the way to the end, because if we sew right to the edge, we can't actually, we won't be able to put our, the bottom of the bag on. So this is my little method here. I've got my 3/8 inch marks. Of course, if I had it sitting down further, I could do it better. But I'm going to mark. So this is where I'm going to start stitching. I'm going to mark this other one as well. So I'm going to stop. Those are my stop and start marks. And once again, just going to ease all of this in and clip. I marked on the other side, and I'm going to end up needing to do it on this side. I should actually be very close to my Peltex, but that's where my mark is going to have to go, because when I sew with this side flat against my sewing table. So I'm just going to finish this up. So I'm going to be sewing the outside of the outside side to the main body. I've got my zipper foot on because I have my piping in this seam here. So I need to get up as close as I possibly can to that piping. So I've put my zipper foot on, and I've actually moved my needle over as far as I can against the edge of the zipper foot. So that will get my needle as close as I possibly can. Just gonna have to move you out of the way a little bit here. There we go. So again, I back stitch, but I'm only going to back stitch to 3/8, and then I'm going to come forward. I'm going through a bunch of layers here. I'm going through extra vinyl. We've got the vinyl contrast bottom. This is where my seam is, where the contrast is sewn onto the body. I've also got, that's where my piping comes out. Now this, I can sort of feel where my piping is, and I'm going to try and get, I don't want to take too many tries at this, so I'm going to go slow, try to do a good job. This is actually, for whatever reason, maybe it's because there's so many layers, it's actually a little easier than, things are staying in place a little nicer than with the lining. Just going around this curve. I'm not sure if the camera can kind of pick it up or not, but as I'm sewing, I can kind of see there's a bit of a bump there where my piping is. So And I'm having to kind of ease some extra fullness in around this edge. So I'm all the way around, and I'm going to check while I'm here. I'm just going to double check my piping. But actually it looks pretty good. Good. Okay. Well, and if there was any spots where I was really far away, or it was really uneven, then I would just go back in now and fix that seam. So it actually looks pretty good. The one thing I am going to do though is I'm going to do some notches around here. There's a lot of fullness because I'm using vinyl piping. It's very, very thick in there, so when I turn it the right way, those curves don't curve quite as nice as I would like them to. So I'm just going to grab my scissors while we're just sitting here. Now these little guys are actually, they're for making rag quilts. These are Fons and Porter scissors. These are really quite expensive. Actually, I'm looking on here. These are made by Kai as well. They're Japanese made, so that's the reason why they're so good. Those little black scissors that I always use, those ones are Kai as well. And Japanese steel is very very high quality. So these little ones, the reason why I'm using these ones is because they clip through everything. They're not really good for much other than doing clipping because they're so short and they have such a long, like, you don't get much out of them, but you have a lot of leverage when you're cutting, and they are super sharp. So I'm just going to go around. I'm going to do both edges. Well, I have a cat somewhere telling me that they want in. All right, so I've got those, and now when I turn it, now it's going to curve nice and smoothly. So there we have that. One more step, and that's... So we're kind of in the home stretch here now. This is my bottom piece. And I'm going to clip this on. So I'll start in the corner. I'm just going to fold that, kind of match it.
That's why we leave these open. It makes it easier to sew in the bottom piece. And it takes some maneuvering as well to get everything to fit in. There. So I'm going to start, when I sew, I'm going to have this flat down, and I'm going to start in my corner. Now, if you can see that, where my stitching line comes there, that's where I'm going to start. I may end up having to clip a little bit of my Peltex in that seam, but that's how I'm going to start. This isn't sitting quite right either. It needs to be pulled a little bit more. Just a little bit straighter. There we go. And you have to maneuver things again. Get that corner kind of out of the way so that... I guess I can't talk when I have my clip in my mouth either. So yeah, so before I start sewing, I'm going to get this up in there where it should be. And I'm going to do a 3/8 inch seam allowance all the way around. So that's what I'm going to go and do right now. And yeah, I don't think you probably need to be at my sewing machine watching me do this seam. There's really nothing to it. It's just, it's stopping and starting each time though. So I'm going to go from here and stop at this corner. I want to make sure that I get right up to that corner, because I don't want any holes when I turn things inside right, inside out, right side out, whatever the case may be. So I'm going to stop, stop, and then start, stop. I'm going to do that with each of these seams. So now I have it sewn all the way around. I have my bottom sewn on. The last thing I want to do here is I want to clip my corners so that I can get nicer corners, more square corners. So I want to be careful that I don't cut through my stitching, but I'm just going to take some of that bulk out. I'm just going to trim back a little tiny bit more on each one. Just take a little bit of that out. So now it's the moment of truth. I've got my corners clipped, everything's ready to go, and so it's a matter of turning everything through this one pocket. And again, I want to just be kind of gentle as I'm going. There's no point in going to all of this work and then pulling seams out and pulling things apart. Especially if you have vinyl. With the Peltex and everything, it can get pretty thick. And the last thing that we have to do is sew this shut. So for this I am going to change out my thread, put white thread in. So this last one, all I did was do really, really close seam to the edge. And that gets tucked in there. And there we have it. I am just really pleased with this. I think it looks great. Got some extra threads. Do a little bit of steaming just to kind of press this stuff down a little bit more. Get some crisper edges on it. But yeah, I like it. So, I want to see your projects when you're all done. Please post them on my Friends of Debby Hunker group. I have the link to that is under the video, and please come join our group and see what we're doing. And I hope you're happy with your project. I sure am happy with mine. So again, I'm not sure which is going to be the next bag that we do, but stay tuned for that. I'm not going anywhere. So thanks again.